Professor Then stood before the gathered scholars and laughed. His forearms gestured wildly as he dismissed the ancient texts displayed on the holographic screens around him. "The first makers," he said with contempt in his voice. "You waste your time searching for ghosts. They never existed. They are stories we tell children, nothing more." The other scholars in the great library of Velkaris Station murmured among themselves. Some agreed with Then, others were not so certain. For 50,000 years, the Galactic Coalition had ruled the stars. 847 different species lived together in peace. They traded goods, shared knowledge, and explored the universe side by side. But no one could explain the ancient records that spoke of beings called humans, the mysterious first makers who supposedly gave civilization to the galaxy. Dr. Jiwon sat quietly in the back of the lecture hall. She was a visitor to this world, having traveled far from her home. She studied the texts carefully, reading words that most species considered mere fantasy. The records were old and broken, missing crucial information, but they all pointed to one thing. Somewhere in the galaxy, a species called humanity had once existed. They had built great things. They had taught other species how to form governments, how to communicate, how to reach for the stars. Then they vanished without explanation. "Where is the evidence?" Then demanded.
"Show me a single artifact."
"Show me one building, one ship, one body." "You cannot because they never existed." Jiwon wanted to argue, but she remained silent. She had no proof either. Only fragments of data, whispers in ancient databases, and a feeling deep in her bones that humanity was real. She was human herself, though no one in the coalition knew what that meant. To them, she was just another alien from an unknown world that had recently developed space travel. Far from Velkaris Station, Captain Daehyun stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn and stared at the view screen. His ship was humanity's first true deep space exploration vessel. It was not the largest ship ever built, nor the fastest, but it represented something important. For 40,000 years, Earth had been hidden behind a massive cloud of cosmic dust and energy. The barrier had formed naturally after the sun experienced violent storms that nearly destroyed all life on the planet. Humanity had survived, but barely. They rebuilt slowly, forgetting much of their past. The barrier had finally dissolved 2 years ago. For the first time in millennia, Earth's sun shone clearly in the galaxy. Humanity looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. They built ships. They developed faster-than-light travel through years of difficult research. And now Daehyun's crew was making first contact with whatever civilizations existed beyond their home. "Captain," Lieutenant Minho said from the tactical station, "I'm detecting a ship. Unknown design. It's not responding to our hails." Daehyun leaned forward in his chair. "Keep trying. Use all frequencies. Engineer Yuna, make sure our translation programs are ready." Yuna's fingers danced across her console. "Ready, sir. If they use any mathematical or logical communication structure, we should be able to establish basic dialogue." The alien ship was large, 3 times the size of the Eternal Dawn. It had a smooth, organic appearance, as if grown rather than built. Lights pulsed along its hull in patterns that might have been decorative or functional. It moved slowly, scanning the space around Earth's solar system with powerful sensors. Finally, a response came. The translation program worked quickly, converting alien sounds into words humans could understand. "Unknown vessel. This is Coalition Survey Ship Brightness of Tomorrow. Identify yourself and your world of origin." Daehyun stood. He straightened his uniform and nodded to Minho, who opened the communication channel. "This is Captain Daehyun of Earth Vessel Eternal Dawn. We come in peace. We are explorers from the planet Earth, 3rd planet of the star you may know as Sol." There was a long pause. When the alien voice returned, it sounded confused. "Earth, Sol? These designations are not in our database. You have achieved faster-than-light capability recently?" "Within the last 200 years, Daehyun confirmed. "We have been isolated. We wish to learn about other civilizations and share knowledge." Another pause. Then the alien voice took on a formal tone. "On behalf of the Galactic Coalition, we welcome you to the wider galaxy. You are granted probationary species status. This means you may observe our society and learn our ways. In time, if you prove peaceful and responsible, you may apply for full membership. We will escort you to the nearest coalition station." Daehyun felt excitement and nervousness in equal measure. Humanity was not alone. An entire civilization of species existed out there, working together. But they treated Earth as primitive, as newcomers who needed guidance. They did not know that humans had once walked these same stars thousands of years ago. They did not remember. The eternal dawn followed the alien ship through multiple jumps across space. Each time they emerged in a new system, Daehyun saw wonders. Massive stations orbiting gas giants, planets with cities that glowed from orbit, ships of 1,000 different designs moving in careful patterns like schools of fish. The coalition was vast and ancient, but something felt wrong to Daehyun. Everything seemed slow, comfortable, safe. When they finally docked at Valkyrie Station, Daehyun and his crew were given rooms and access to public areas. They were assigned a liaison, a friendly insectoid being named Krell who explained coalition customs and laws. Jiwon met them in the station's central plaza. She had been living among the coalition for 3 months, studying their libraries and learning everything she could. "Captain," she said quietly when they had a private moment, "I found something. The ancient texts mention a species that matches our description perfectly. They called them the First Makers. But everyone here thinks it's mythology. They don't believe we existed." Daehyun felt a chill run down his spine. What happened to humanity? Why don't they remember us? Jiwon shook her head. The records are incomplete. There was some kind of catastrophe 50,000 years ago, something called the Great Severing. Communications across the galaxy failed. Civilizations collapsed. When the coalition reformed, humanity was gone. They rebuilt without us. Over time, we became legends. Then myths. Now most species think we never existed at all. Minho joined them, looking troubled. "I've been listening to news broadcasts. There's trouble on the frontier. Something is attacking coalition worlds. They're calling the enemy the Ravagers. 23 planets have been destroyed in the last 6 months. How is the coalition responding?" Daehyun asked. "They're not," Minho said. "At least not effectively. They're running away, evacuating worlds instead of fighting. They've forgotten how to wage war." Daehyun looked out through the massive windows of the station. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species walked past, living their peaceful lives. They had no idea that humanity, the species they thought was mythical, had returned. And they had no idea that humanity remembered something the galaxy had forgotten. They remembered how to fight, somewhere beyond the edge of coalition space. In the darkness between stars, the Ravagers gathered their strength. Their hive-mind consciousness felt no mercy, no doubt. They existed only to consume, to spread, to destroy. They had tasted coalition worlds and found them weak. More would fall. Nothing could stop them. But they had not yet encountered humanity. They did not know that myths could bleed. They did not know that legends could carry weapons. They would learn soon enough. Ambassador Solman arrived at Valkyrie Station 3 weeks after first contact. She carried Earth's hopes with her, along with a small diplomatic team. The coalition had invited humanity to send a representative to observe their government and learn their ways. Solman was chosen because she understood politics and could speak carefully. She was also chosen because she asked hard questions that others avoided. The Coalition Council chamber was enormous. Representatives from 847 species gathered in a circular room that seemed to stretch forever. Each species had their own section with specialized seating, atmosphere, and gravity. Translator devices hummed constantly, converting thousands of languages into something everyone could understand. Solman sat in the observer's gallery watching with careful eyes. The current discussion was about the Ravagers. A holographic display showed the most recent attack. A world called Thenophore had been home to 4 million beings. The Ravagers arrived without warning. Their ships, massive organic things that looked like they were grown from dark meat and bone, descended upon the planet. Within hours, everything was gone. The cities were consumed. The people were consumed. Even the oceans were drained away. All that remained was a dead rock floating in space. "We must evacuate the frontier worlds," a tall, crystalline being said. Its voice chimed like bells. "We cannot defend against these creatures. Our only option is to move our people to safer systems." "Agreed," another representative said. This one looked like a floating jellyfish surrounded by a bubble of water. "We should establish a defensive perimeter here." It highlighted a line on the map that gave up 1/3 of coalition space. Everything beyond this point should be abandoned. Solman listened in disbelief. They were discussing retreat as if it was the only possibility. No one mentioned fighting back. No one suggested attacking the Ravagers before they could attack more worlds. The entire council seemed paralyzed by fear. A voice cut through the discussion. It belonged to a Velkari named Vren, who served as the Coalition's chief archaeologist. Perhaps we are approaching this incorrectly. Our military has not fought a real war in 40,000 years. We have peacekeepers and defense forces, but we have no warriors. We have forgotten how warfare works. What are you suggesting? The council leader asked. Her name was Tess, a being made of living metal who had served for 300 years. Vren activated his own display. Ancient text appeared, written in a language most species could not read. I have been studying the old myths, the stories of the first makers. We always assumed they were fiction, but I found something interesting. A data cache hidden in the ruins on Kelrath 7. Inside were genetic sequences. I compared them to the new species that recently made contact. The humans from Earth. The chamber fell silent. Every representative turned their attention to Vren. The genetic markers match perfectly. Vren continued. The first makers were not myths. They were humans, and they have returned. Chaos erupted in the council chamber. Some representatives shouted in denial. Others demanded to see the proof. Soman felt every eye in the room turn toward her. She stood slowly, keeping her composure even though her heart raced. Is this true? Tess asked, her metallic voice carrying across the chamber. Are your people the first makers from our legends? Soman chose her words carefully. We do not know all of our history. Earth experienced a great catastrophe long ago. Much was lost. But our oldest records speak of a time when humanity traveled the stars and met many species. If your legends speak of beings who helped civilizations grow and thrive, then yes, we may be the same people. The chamber remained silent. Then slowly Tess spoke again. The legends say the first makers were master strategists. They understood warfare in ways we never did. They could defeat any enemy through cunning and courage. She paused. We need that knowledge now. The Ravagers will not stop until they have consumed everything. We are losing this fight because we do not know how to win. Another representative stood. You cannot be serious. These humans are a primitive species that just developed space travel. They have no advanced weapons, no powerful ships. What can they offer us? Commander Tajin's voice came through the communication system. He had been listening from Earth. We offer something you have lost. The will to fight. The knowledge of strategy and tactics. The understanding that sometimes to protect what you love, you must be willing to destroy what threatens it. Within days, a formal request came from the Coalition Council. They offered humanity full membership immediately if Earth would help them fight the Ravagers. They needed military advisors, tactical specialists, and warriors who remembered how to wage war. Earth's government debated for exactly 1 hour. Then they agreed, not because they wanted power or status in the Coalition. They agreed because 4 million beings had died on Thena-4, and more would die if no one stopped the Ravagers. Captain Daehyun was promoted to Admiral. He was given command of a Coalition task force with one simple mission: learn how to fight. He brought together officers from dozens of species and began teaching them things that seemed obvious to humans, but alien to everyone else. War is not about having the biggest guns, Daehyun explained to a room full of confused Coalition officers. It's about using what you have in the smartest way possible. It's about deception, making your enemy think you're weak when you're strong, making them think you'll attack from the left when you attack from the right. It's about understanding your enemy's weaknesses and exploiting them without mercy. A Velkari officer raised one of his 4 hands. But that seemed dishonorable. Deception is considered wrong in Coalition culture. Deception keeps your people alive, Daehyun said firmly. Honor is meaningless if everyone you love is dead. The Ravagers don't care about honor. They only care about consuming, so we must care about winning. Pilot Hyejin arrived from Earth with the first wave of human military personnel. She was young, but had trained her entire life for space combat. She took control of Coalition fighter squadrons and immediately saw the problems. They flew in perfect formations following rigid procedures. They never took risks or tried unexpected maneuvers. You're flying like machines, Hyejin told her new squadron after watching their practice runs. Predictable. Easy to counter. Watch me. She took her fighter and dove toward a training drone at full speed. At the last moment, she cut her engines, flipped her ship upside down, and fired while drifting past. The drone exploded. She relit her engines and pulled away in a tight spiral. that would have torn a less skilled pilot apart. The squadron stared in amazement. "That was reckless," one pilot said. "That was effective," Hyejin corrected. "The Ravagers won't expect it because you've never done it before. Unpredictability is a weapon. Use it." Dr. Sunwoo arrived with Earth's research team. He examined Ravager biology from the few samples the Coalition had recovered. His approach horrified the Coalition scientists. He suggested weapons that would cause maximum pain and suffering to the Ravagers. He designed attacks that targeted their reproductive systems, their communication nodes, their food processing organs. "This is cruel," a Coalition scientist protested. "This is war," Sunwoo replied coldly. "They don't show mercy to the beings they consume. We cannot afford to show mercy to them." Lieutenant Yoonji worked in intelligence analyzing Ravager patterns. She noticed something the Coalition had missed. The attacks were not random. The Ravagers were testing Coalition defenses, probing for weaknesses. Each attack gathered information about response times, weapon capabilities, and strategic thinking. "They're learning," Yoonji reported to Admiral Daehyun. "And I know what they learned. They learned the Coalition is weak. They learned that we retreat instead of fighting. So they're preparing for a major assault." "Where?" Daehyun asked. Yoonji pulled up a star map. One system glowed red. Thandris Prime, the Coalition capital. 12 billion people. If they take that world, the Coalition will collapse into chaos. Daehyun studied the map. "How long do we have?" 3 weeks. Maybe 4. Then we have 3 weeks to teach this galaxy how to fight. Across Coalition space, human officers worked day and night. They trained Coalition soldiers in ground combat tactics. They taught Coalition ship captains how to coordinate attacks. They showed Coalition strategists how to think like predators instead of prey. The Coalition military numbered 3,000 ships. They were powerful vessels with advanced shields and weapons. But their crews had never faced real combat. They had never experienced the chaos of true battle. They had never been forced to make the terrible choice between saving themselves or saving others. Earth's defense fleet prepared to join them. 147 ships, smaller than Coalition vessels, less advanced technology, but crewed by humans who understood that sometimes victory required sacrifice. General Boyoung addressed Earth's military forces before they departed. "We go to fight for people we barely know. We go to defend worlds we have never seen. But we go because it is right. Because if we do not stand against the darkness, it will consume everything, including Earth, including humanity. So we fight not just for the Coalition, but for our future." The combined fleet gathered at Thandris Prime. 3,000 Coalition ships surrounded the planet in defensive formations. The training continued with increasing urgency. Admiral Daehyun gathered Coalition officers in the command center and showed them something they had never seen before. Battle footage from Earth's history. Ancient wars fought with primitive weapons, then more recent conflicts with advanced technology. The Coalition officers watched in horror and fascination. "Your species fights itself?" a crystalline officer asked. "You war against your own kind?" "We did," Daehyun confirmed. "For thousands of years. It was terrible. It was wasteful. It nearly destroyed us many times. But it taught us something you need to learn. We learned that war is not about glory or honor. It's about achieving your objective while denying the enemy theirs. It's about combined forces working together. Ground troops, naval forces, air support, intelligence operations, all moving as one." He changed the display to show Coalition battle reports from the Ravager attacks. "You send your ships one at a time or in small groups. They get destroyed. You never coordinate between different ship types. Your cruisers don't support your fighters. Your fighters don't screen for your capital ships. You fight as individuals, not as an army." The officers looked uncomfortable. One spoke up. "We have peacekeeping forces, not armies. We maintain order, we don't wage war." "Then you will die," Daehyun said bluntly. "The Ravagers wage war. They coordinate perfectly because they share one mind. Every ship knows what every other ship is doing. They move as one organism. To defeat them, you must move as one force. Not because you share a mind, but because you share a purpose." Over the following days, Daehyun drilled the Coalition fleet relentlessly. He made them practice formations they had never used, attack patterns that felt aggressive and dangerous, retreat maneuvers that involved covering each other instead of fleeing individually. Many officers complained. Some called his methods reckless. But slowly, the fleet began to move like something more than a collection of individual ships. Pilot Heejin pushed her fighter squadrons even harder. She taught them maneuvers that seemed impossible. Barrel rolls at full throttle, high-speed passes through narrow spaces, using debris and asteroids as cover. Most importantly, she taught them to trust their instincts instead of always following procedures. The battle computer will tell you the safe option, Heejin explained to her pilots. But safe doesn't win fights. Sometimes you need to trust your gut and take the dangerous path. If you see an opening, take it. Don't wait for permission. A young Velkari pilot named Thess had trouble with this concept. She had been raised to follow rules exactly. Taking initiative without orders felt wrong. During one training exercise, Heejin deliberately left an opening in the opposing formation. Thess saw it but hesitated. By the time she decided to act, the opening had closed. After the exercise, Heejin pulled Thess aside. You saw the opportunity. Why didn't you take it? I wasn't ordered to break formation, Thess said quietly. In real combat, there won't be time for orders, Heejin said. You'll see a chance that lasts 3 seconds. If you wait for permission, people die. I need you to understand something. Following orders is important, but knowing when to break the rules is what separates good pilots from dead pilots. Thess nodded slowly. She practiced alone for hours after that, forcing herself to act on instinct instead of waiting for instructions. Dr. Sunwoo worked in laboratories deep within Thandris Prime. He studied every piece of Ravager biology the Coalition had recovered. Their flesh was dense and regenerative. Their ships could repair damage in real time by consuming matter around them. They communicated through biological radio waves that pulsed through their entire fleet. They were incredibly difficult to kill with conventional weapons. But Sunwoo found weaknesses. The Ravager bioships needed to maintain a specific internal frequency to coordinate with the hive mind. Disrupt that frequency and individual ships would become confused and vulnerable. He designed resonance weapons that could create destructive harmonics in Ravager tissue. The weapons would make their own bodies tear themselves apart from the inside. Coalition scientists were disturbed by the weapon designs. These will cause immense suffering, one said. Good, Sunwoo replied. Maybe pain will make them retreat. Maybe it will make them hesitate. Any advantage we can get, we take. This is not about being kind. This is about survival. He also discovered something important about Ravager reproduction. They needed to consume massive amounts of organic matter to create new bioships. That's why they targeted inhabited planets. The billions of lives on each world provided the raw material for the Ravager fleet to grow. If the Coalition could destroy enough bioships quickly enough, the Ravagers wouldn't be able to replace their losses. Lieutenant Yunji continued analyzing Ravager communication patterns. She worked with a team of Coalition intelligence officers, teaching them how to think like the enemy. Don't just look at what they do, she explained. Look at what they don't do. Why don't they attack heavily defended systems? Because they want easy victories. Why don't they stay to hold territory? Because they're nomadic, always moving to the next food source. They're not conquerors. They're locusts. She built a predictive model of Ravager behavior. It showed exactly when they would arrive at Thandris Prime and what formation they would use. The Coalition officers were amazed by her accuracy. How can you be so certain? One asked. Because they've done the same thing 23 times before, Yunji explained. They don't change tactics because they've never needed to. Every world has fallen the same way. But we're going to change that pattern. We're going to show them that this galaxy can bite back. General Boyong prepared ground forces for planetary defense. The Coalition had evacuated most of Thandris Prime's civilian population, but 12 billion people could not be moved in 3 weeks. Millions remained in sheltered cities, hoping the battle would stay in space. Boyong knew better. Some Ravagers would reach the surface. When they did, they would need to be stopped. He trained Coalition ground forces in urban warfare, fighting in cities using buildings as cover, setting traps and ambushes. The Coalition soldiers had never fought this way. They were used to peacekeeping, not killing. Boyong had to break them down and rebuild them as warriors. Every street is a battlefield, Boyong told them. Every building is a fortress. The enemy will come in waves trying to overwhelm you with numbers. You cannot retreat. Behind you are civilians who cannot defend themselves. You are the wall that protects them, and walls do not move. He organized the forces into units that could support each other, heavy weapons teams on rooftops, sniper positions in high buildings, mobile squads that could respond to breaches. He established supply lines and medical stations. He turned Thandris Prime's capital city into a fortress. Admiral Daehyun brought all the human commanders together 1 week before the Ravagers were expected to arrive. They gathered in a secure room away from coalition observers. Daehyun looked at each of them. Hijin, Sunwoo, Yunji, Boyoung, Commander Taejin, who led Earth's fleet. These were the people humanity had sent to fight. The coalition doesn't understand what we're about to do, Daehyun said quietly. They think war has rules. They think we'll fight the Ravagers and either win or lose, and then everything will go back to normal. They don't understand the cost. They'll learn, Taejin said grimly. When the shooting starts, they'll see what war really means. Some of us won't survive this, Daehyun continued. The coalition has 3,000 ships. We have 147. We're outmatched in technology and numbers. The only advantages we have are training and the willingness to do what needs to be done. Then we use those advantages, Hyejin said. We hit them hard and fast. We make them hurt. We show them that this galaxy isn't helpless anymore. Sunwoo nodded. My weapons are ready. The coalition fleet is equipped with resonance generators. When those bioships get close, we'll tear them apart from the inside. Ground forces are prepared, Boyoung added. If the Ravagers land, they'll face defenders who know how to fight for every inch of ground. Yunji brought up her final analysis. They'll arrive in 3 days. The fleet will number approximately 10,000 bioships based on energy signatures we've detected. They'll enter the system here and move directly toward the planet. They won't expect resistance because we've never given them resistance before. Then we surprise them, Daehyun said. We don't wait for them to attack. We hit them the moment they enter the system. We use every trick, every tactic, every weapon we have, and we don't stop until they're destroyed or we are. The meeting ended. The commanders returned to their positions. Across Thandris Prime and throughout the fleet, final preparations were made. Weapons were checked. Ships were positioned. Soldiers said quiet prayers to whatever gods they believed in. On the 3rd day, the Ravagers arrived. 10,000 bioships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Each ship was massive, organic, and hungry. They moved together in a swarm formation, blocking out the stars with their dark mass. They had consumed 23 worlds without real opposition. Thandris Prime would be number 24. But as they began their approach, something unexpected happened. The defense fleet did not retreat. The ships did not scatter in panic. Instead, they moved forward. 3,000 coalition ships. The Ravager fleet spread across space like a dark stain. 10,000 bioships, each one large enough to swallow a city. They moved with perfect coordination, driven by a single hive mind that had never known defeat. They had expected the usual response: panic, scattered resistance, evacuation, easy prey. Instead, they encountered something they had never faced before: organized aggression. The coalition fleet moved forward in formations they had practiced relentlessly over the past 3 weeks. Human ships led each attack group, showing the coalition forces where to strike and when to pull back. Admiral Daehyun watched the tactical display on his bridge. Red dots representing Ravager ships filled the screen. Blue dots representing friendly forces moved among them in coordinated patterns. All groups execute attack pattern alpha. Target the center of their formation. Make them respond to us instead of following their plan. Across the fleet, ship captains acknowledged the order. This was the first time many coalition officers had flown toward danger instead of away from it. Their hands trembled on the controls. Their voices shook as they gave orders to their crews. But they flew forward because the humans beside them flew forward without hesitation. Commander Taejin led the first attack wave. His dreadnought, the Earth's Shield, charged directly into the heart of the Ravager formation. 20 human cruisers followed him. Behind them came 200 coalition ships, their weapons ready. The Ravagers opened fire with biological weapons that spat acid and launched bone-like projectiles. Shields flared bright as they absorbed the impacts. Return fire, Taejin ordered calmly. Target their communication nodes. Dr. Sunwoo's research showed they're vulnerable there. Human railguns and missile batteries opened fire. Coalition energy weapons added their power to the assault. The first Ravager bioship shuddered as rounds punched through its organic armor. Then Dr. Sunwoo's resonance weapons activated. High-frequency waves penetrated the bioship's hull and created destructive harmonics in its tissue. The ship began to vibrate, then shake violently. Cracks appeared along its surface. With a sound like breaking bones, the bioship tore itself apart from the inside. The Coalition officers who witnessed it stared in shock. They had fought Ravagers before and barely scratched them. Now they watched one die in seconds. Again, Tajin commanded. Keep hitting them. Don't give them time to adapt. The attack wave swept through the Ravager center, destroying ship after ship. The resonance weapons proved devastating. Ravager bioships tried to defend themselves, but their regenerative abilities couldn't keep up with the internal damage. Within minutes, 50 bioships were destroyed, but the Ravagers adapted quickly. The hive mind recognized the threat and changed tactics. Instead of holding formation, they spread out and surrounded the attack wave. Suddenly, Tajin's ships were caught in a closing trap. Thousands of Ravagers converged from all sides. Sir, we're surrounded, his tactical officer reported. They're cutting off our retreat path. Tajin smiled grimly. Good. That means they're not attacking the planet. All ships prepare for Emergency Maneuver 7. The Coalition captains in his formation didn't understand at first. Emergency Maneuver 7 was something humans had drilled them on, but they thought was insane. It involved overloading ship reactors and using the energy surge to create a massive explosion. Commander, that will destroy our ships, a Velkari captain protested. That's the point, Tajin replied. We're not here to survive. We're here to win. All human ships execute on my mark. Coalition ships clear the blast radius and continue the attack. The Coalition ships pulled back quickly, recognizing what was about to happen. The human ships pushed deeper into the Ravager swarm, positioning themselves at key points. On each bridge, human crews made their peace with what was coming. They thought of Earth. They thought of the billions of lives depending on them. They thought of the Coalition species who would remember this day. For those who come after us, Tajin said quietly. Then he gave the final order. Execute. 21 human ships, including the Earth shield, overloaded their reactors simultaneously. The explosions lit up space like miniature suns. The blast waves ripped through hundreds of Ravager bioships at point-blank range. Organic armor melted. Communication nodes burned. The carefully coordinated hive mind formation turned into chaos as nearly 200 bioships died in an instant. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Daehyun watched the tactical display. 21 blue dots vanished. 200 red dots vanished with them. He felt each loss like a physical wound. Those were his people, humans who would never see Earth again. But their sacrifice had broken the Ravager formation and given the Coalition fleet an opening. All forces attack now, Daehyun commanded, his voice hard. Make their deaths count. The entire Coalition fleet surged forward. 3,000 ships attacked as one coordinated force. They had learned from the humans. They didn't fight as individuals anymore. They fought as an army. Cruisers supported battleships. Fighters screened for capital ships. Every attack was coordinated. Every maneuver practiced. Pilot Hyejin led her fighter squadrons through the chaos. She had 400 fighters under her command, human and Coalition mixed together. They flew through the debris field left by the suicide attack, using the wreckage as cover. Ravager bioships tried to target them, but the fighters moved too fast, too unpredictably. Remember your training, Hyejin called over the squadron channel. Don't fly straight. Don't be predictable. Make them work for every shot, she demonstrated by diving toward a Ravager bioship, then cutting her engines at the last moment. Her fighter drifted past while still firing, raking the bioship's hull with weapons fire. Behind her, the rest of the squadron copied her move. 40 fighters attacking one target, all from different angles, all unpredictable. The bioship tried to defend itself but couldn't track so many erratic targets. It died under concentrated fire. The young Velkari pilot Thess flew beside Hyejin. She had learned her lessons well. When she saw an opening in the Ravager formation, she didn't hesitate. She broke formation, dove through the gap, and destroyed a bioship's communication node before it could react. 3 other fighters followed her lead, and together they eliminated the target. Good kill, Thess, Hyejin transmitted. That's what I've been teaching you. Trust your instincts, but the battle was far from over. Despite heavy losses, the Ravagers still outnumbered the defense fleet. They adapted their tactics, learning from each exchange. They began targeting human ships specifically, recognizing them as the greatest threat. More blue dots disappeared from the tactical display. A group of Ravager bioships broke through the orbital defense line and began their descent toward Thandris Prime. General Boyoung watched from the surface as dozens of massive shapes entered the atmosphere, burning like dark meteors. They would land in minutes and then the ground battle would begin. All units prepare for contact, Boyoung transmitted. Remember your training. Hold your positions. Make them fight for every street. The first bioship crashed into the capital city's northern district. It tore through buildings like they were paper, crushing everything beneath its bulk. Then it began to split open, releasing thousands of Ravager ground units. They looked like insects merged with nightmares. Each one was driven by the same hive mind, moving with perfect coordination. Coalition ground forces opened fire. Heavy weapons hammered the Ravager swarm. Explosions ripped through their ranks. But they kept coming, pouring out of the bioship like a flood of chitin and teeth. They crashed against the defensive lines like a wave against a wall. Hold the line, Boyoung commanded. Do not retreat. Human soldiers fought alongside coalition troops. They showed by example what it meant to stand firm under pressure. When Ravagers broke through the initial defenses, human squads counterattacked immediately. They used the urban terrain perfectly, ambushing from buildings, setting traps in narrow streets, using explosives to collapse structures on enemy formations. A coalition unit began to fall back under pressure. Their position was being overrun. Boyoung personally led a relief force to their location. He arrived to find panicked soldiers retreating in disorder. Ravagers were close behind them. Stop running, Boyoung ordered. Form up here. Now. Something in his voice and his absolute certainty made them obey. They formed a defensive line across the street. Boyoung positioned them quickly, putting heavy weapons where they would do the most damage. When the Ravagers rounded the corner, they ran directly into concentrated fire. The narrow street became a killing zone. Bodies piled up, forcing the Ravagers to climb over their own dead. The line held. In orbit, the battle continued to rage. Dr. Sunwoo's resonance weapons had destroyed hundreds of bioships, but the Ravagers had started rotating damaged ships to the rear, while fresh ones pushed forward. They were learning to minimize casualties. The defense fleet was suffering too. Nearly 800 coalition ships had been destroyed. 40 more human vessels were gone. Admiral Daehyun knew they were losing despite their successes. The numbers were against them. Even with superior tactics and weapons, the Ravagers could simply overwhelm them through attrition. They needed something more, something unexpected. He looked at the tactical display, studying the Ravager formation. The final attack began with everything the defense fleet had left. 2,200 coalition ships and 89 human vessels formed into a single massive spearhead formation. They accelerated towards Sector 7, where the Ravager command cluster coordinated the hive mind. It was protected by 500 bioships, the largest and most powerful in the entire swarm. Admiral Daehyun stood on his bridge and watched death approach. The odds were terrible. Many ships would not survive this attack. But if they could destroy the command cluster, the Ravager fleet would lose its coordination. Individual bioships would become vulnerable, confused, easy to destroy. Everything depended on the next few minutes. Resonance weapons at maximum power, Daehyun ordered. All ships concentrate fire on the command cluster. Ignore everything else. The spearhead formation punched through the Ravager defensive line. Bioships attacked from all sides, but the fleet maintained its formation. Ships that took fatal damage kept flying forward, using their last moments to clear a path for those behind them. Coalition captains who 3 weeks ago would have retreated now flew directly into enemy fire without hesitation. Pilot Heejin and her fighter squadrons flew ahead of the main fleet, drawing enemy fire and destroying targeting nodes. They were outnumbered 50-1 but fought with the ferocity humans had taught them. When Heejin's fighter took damage and began to fail, she didn't eject. She aimed her dying ship at a command bioship's critical junction and fired her engines to maximum. "This one's for Earth," she transmitted. Then her fighter struck home and exploded, taking a massive section of the bioship with it. Her squadron saw what she had done. They understood the message. Sometimes winning required sacrifice. 12 more fighters followed her example, striking command bioships in suicide runs that opened gaps in the defensive wall. On the surface, General Boyoung felt the change in the Ravager ground forces. They had been coordinated perfectly, each unit supporting the others. Suddenly they became disorganized. Units moved without purpose. Some stopped attacking entirely. The hive mind's control was weakening. "Press the attack," Boyung ordered. Hit them while they're confused. Coalition ground forces pushed forward, reclaiming territory they had lost. Human soldiers led the way, showing no mercy to an enemy that had shown none to the billions they consumed. The battle on the surface began to turn. In orbit, Admiral Daehyun's flagship broke through the final defensive layer. The command cluster was ahead, 6 massive bioships linked by biological cables that pulsed with communication signals. These were the brains coordinating 10,000 ships. Destroy them and the battle was won. All weapons fire, Daehyun commanded. Every ship in the spearhead opened fire simultaneously. Thousands of weapons struck the command cluster at once. Resonance generators created devastating harmonics. Missiles and railgun rounds tore through organic armor. Energy beams burned deep into bioship cores. The command cluster tried to defend itself but was overwhelmed by the sheer volume of fire. One command bioship exploded, then another. The biological cables connecting them snapped, spraying biomatter across space. The hive mind screamed silently as its coordination centers died. Across the entire Ravager fleet, ships began to lose their perfect synchronization. But victory came at a price. The Ravager defenders fought desperately to protect their command cluster. They crashed into Coalition ships, tearing them apart with claws and acid. They fired biological weapons that ate through shields and armor. The spearhead formation held together but was being destroyed piece by piece. A massive Ravager bioship locked onto Admiral Daehyun's flagship. Its weapons charged, preparing to fire a shot that would destroy the bridge. Daehyun saw it coming, but there was no time to evade. Then a Coalition cruiser moved between them. It was a Velkari vessel, commanded by Captain Thess, who had been one of the first to question human methods. She had learned well. She understood what sacrifice meant. For the myths that bled for us, Thess transmitted. Her ship took the full force of the Ravager weapon. It broke apart, shields failing, hull cracking, but it bought enough time for Daehyun's flagship to destroy the attacker. Daehyun felt each loss deeply. Human and Coalition alike, they were dying to protect a galaxy that had forgotten how to fight. But they were also winning. The last command bioship exploded under concentrated fire. The command cluster was destroyed completely. The effect on the Ravager fleet was immediate and catastrophic. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination suddenly became confused. They collided with each other. They fired randomly. Some tried to retreat while others kept attacking, creating chaos in their own ranks. The hive mind was broken. Individual bioships were now operating on basic instincts without central direction. All forces pursue and destroy, Daehyun ordered. Don't let them regroup. The Coalition fleet, battered but still fighting, turned the battle into a massacre. They hunted down confused bioships and destroyed them methodically. Dr. Sunwoo's resonance weapons proved even more effective now that the Ravagers couldn't coordinate defenses. Within an hour, half the remaining bioships were destroyed. The rest tried to flee the system. Let some escape, Daehyun ordered, surprising the Coalition officers. Let them carry the message back to the rest of their kind. Let them tell the other Ravagers what happens when they attack this galaxy. The Battle of Thandris Prime lasted 36 hours total. When it finally ended, the orbital space around the planet was filled with debris. Broken ships, both defender and attacker, drifted in silent testimony to the violence that had occurred. The Ravager fleet was completely destroyed. 10,000 bioships reduced to wreckage and organic matter floating in the void, but the cost had been terrible. 89 human ships had entered the battle. None survived intact. 40,000 human personnel were dead. The Coalition lost 800 ships and millions of crew members. On the surface, entire districts of the capital city lay in ruins. Casualties numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Admiral Daehyun stood in the command center and looked at the final casualty reports. So many names, so many lives given to protect others. He felt the weight of command, the burden of being the one who gave orders that sent people to their deaths, but he also felt pride. They had won. Against impossible odds, outnumbered and outgunned, they had won. 3 days after the battle, the Coalition Council convened an emergency session. Every surviving ship captain was invited, every ground force commander, every human officer who had fought in the battle. The massive chamber was filled beyond capacity. Council leader Thess, her living metal body scarred from battle, stood before the assembly. For 50,000 years, we believed the first makers were myths, stories told to children, legends without substance. We were wrong. Humanity is real, And they have shown us something we had forgotten. She gestured to Admiral Daehyun. They showed us that peace is precious, but it must be defended. That civilization must sometimes fight or be consumed. That courage and sacrifice are not outdated concepts, but necessary virtues. The Battle of Thandris Prime will be remembered as the day the myths awoke. The day humanity returned and taught us how to survive. Dr. Ji-won stood and addressed the council. She carried ancient data tablets recovered from archives across the galaxy. I have spent months researching our shared history. The truth is both wonderful and sad. 50,000 years ago, humanity traveled the stars. They encountered hundreds of primitive species and helped them develop civilization. They taught agriculture, writing, mathematics, astronomy. They encouraged each species to grow in their own way while offering guidance. She activated a holographic display, showing the ancient human diaspora. Then came the Great Severing. A cosmic event disrupted faster-than-light travel across the galaxy. The human network collapsed. Earth's sun experienced violent storms that forced humanity to erect a protective barrier. Cut off from each other, human colonies had to survive alone. Over thousands of years they evolved. They adapted to their new worlds. They became the 847 species of the Coalition. The revelation stunned the Assembly. The Coalition species were humanity's descendants, changed by time and evolution but sharing a common origin. We are all human, Ji-won continued. Changed by circumstance but family nonetheless. The people of Earth simply remained closer to the original form. They preserved the knowledge and culture that others forgot, including the knowledge of how to wage war. Ambassador Soman proposed what became known as the Thandris Accords, a complete restructuring of coalition military doctrine based on human principles, aggressive defense instead of passive retreat, combined arms warfare instead of individual ship actions, strategic thinking instead of simply reacting to threats. The Council approved it unanimously. Earth became the Coalition's military command center. Human officers were assigned to train every Coalition military unit. New academies were established where the art of warfare was taught openly, instead of being forgotten. Pilot Hyejin, who had died in the battle, had her name given to the Premier Fighter Academy. Her sacrifice would inspire generations of pilots. General Boyoung oversaw the restructuring of ground forces across Coalition space. Defensive positions were established on vulnerable worlds. Rapid response units were created.